I knew my day was going sideways when I saw Anthony trying to figure out the coffee machine in the break room. The guy looked like he was attempting to defuse a bomb, but with less common sense and more hair product. I'm Chris Sullivan, by the way, 51 years old, senior defense systems engineer for a Colorado aerospace contractor that handles some pretty serious Pentagon work. I've been building satellite coordination networks that keep our military's eyes in the sky working properly for the past 25 years. I don't deal in maybes. I deal in redundant fail-safes and systems that absolutely cannot go down. My background wasn't always corporate offices and climate-controlled server rooms. I spent 8 years in the Air Force right out of high school, working on satellite communication systems at Vandenberg and later at Cheyenne Mountain. That's where I learned that when lives depend on your work, you don't cut corners. You don't take shortcuts. You build it right the first time, test it 3 times, and then test it again. The military taught me that the difference between good enough and perfect can be measured in body bags. That mindset stuck with me when I transitioned to civilian contractor work. I was leaning against the counter watching Anthony struggle with a coffee pod that was clearly labeled decaf while he muttered something about optimizing operational throughput. This is the guy corporate brought in 6 months ago to streamline our division. In my line of work, streamline usually means fire the people who actually understand how the equipment works and replace them with kids who think Python scripts can fix everything. Anthony had an MBA from some online program and spoke exclusively in buzzwords. Synergy, paradigm shifts, disruptive innovation. The guy could turn a 5-minute conversation into a 45-minute PowerPoint presentation about leveraging core competencies. He finally managed to get his brown water, turned to me, and gave me that dead-eyed corporate nod that middle managers practice in bathroom mirrors. "Chris," he said, like my name left a bad taste in his mouth. "Anthony," I replied, keeping my voice flat. "I've got a top-secret clearance that took the government 8 months to approve after they interviewed everyone from my high school teachers to my college roommates. They know more about me than my ex-wife did. But to Anthony, I'm just another expensive line item who doesn't laugh at his agile methodology jokes." Before I get into how this walking LinkedIn profile tried to destroy my career, let me tell you exactly what I do. I maintain the satellite defense coordination systems that track everything from weather patterns to potential threats. When a hurricane's heading for the Gulf Coast, my systems help coordinate the satellite network that feeds real-time data to NOAA, FEMA, and 6 different military commands. When there's unusual aircraft activity near our borders, those same satellites help our Air Force keep track of who's flying where. During the wildfire season, we provide thermal imaging data that helps firefighting efforts across 3 states. It's not glamorous work, but it's the kind of work that keeps people safe. The satellites I coordinate cost more than most people's houses. Each one carries sensors worth millions of dollars, and they're positioned in orbits that took years to calculate and months to achieve. When one of these systems goes down, it doesn't just affect our company. It affects military operations, disaster response, and national security. That's why we have procedures. That's why we have protocols. That's why we don't let fresh college graduates with YouTube programming tutorials anywhere near the controls. I walked back to my lab. We call it the command center. It's a climate-controlled room kept at exactly 65 degrees, filled with enough computing power to run a small city. The walls are lined with monitors showing satellite telemetry, network status indicators, and enough blinking lights to make it look like mission control. Each screen displays data from different satellite clusters, weather monitoring arrays, communication relay networks, and the classified defense tracking systems that I can't talk about in detail, but form the backbone of our military's situational awareness. The room has that particular smell of expensive electronics and filtered air. 4 server racks humming quietly in perfect synchronization, their status lights creating a constellation of green dots that means everything is working exactly as it should. I've spent more time in this room than in my own living room over the past 15 years. Every cable, every connection, every backup system, I either installed it myself or supervised its installation. I sat down at my primary workstation and got back to finishing the quarterly system maintenance protocol. This wasn't your typical IT update where you click install and hope for the best. This was the digital equivalent of servicing a nuclear submarine. Every connection had to be verified. Every handshake protocol had to be tested. Every backup system had to be confirmed operational. One missed step, one shortcut, and we could lose communication with 12 satellites that provide critical data to 3 different military commands. The maintenance routine I was running had taken me 2 days to write and 3 years to perfect. It checks every component in a specific sequence, verifies all encryption keys, tests emergency protocols, and creates multiple backup configurations. The process takes 6 hours to complete and generates a 847-page diagnostic report that gets filed with both our internal security team and our Pentagon oversight contact. I've been doing this quarterly maintenance for so long that my fingers move almost automatically. Check the primary feeds, all green. Verify the backup channels, operational. Test the emergency protocols, confirmed. Update the encryption rotations, synchronized. Each step builds on the previous one, creating a cascade of verifications that ensures everything is working exactly as designed. The compile finished with a satisfying green status bar that meant all systems were optimal. I locked my workstation. Standard protocol is lock, badge out, double check, leave. I never skip steps. That's how you stay employed in defense contracting for 25 years. That's how you maintain clearances. That's how you sleep well at night, knowing that if something goes wrong, it wasn't because you cut a corner. I headed out for lunch, walking down the hallway that connects our secure facility to the main building. The transition from classified workspace to general office area always feels like stepping between two different worlds. The secure side has reinforced walls, no windows, and air filtration systems that could handle a chemical attack. The civilian side has motivational posters about teamwork and a water cooler where people gossip about reality TV shows. The heavy security doors that separate our classified workspace from the general office area require both badge access and biometric confirmation. It's a system I helped design 3 years ago after the Pentagon upgraded our security requirements. Each door weighs 180 pounds and is connected to servers at Peterson Air Force Base that monitor every single entry and exit. I swiped my badge and pressed my thumb to the scanner, just like I'd done thousands of times before. Beep. Red light. Access denied. That stopped me dead in my tracks. These systems don't just malfunction, they're tied into Pentagon databases and monitored by 3 different agencies around the clock. A failure isn't a glitch. It's an event that gets logged, investigated, and reported up the chain of command. The last time someone's badge failed to work, it was because they'd been arrested for a DUI the night before and their clearance was automatically suspended pending review. I wiped my badge on my sleeve, that universal gesture of frustrated hope, and tried again. Same result. The red light blinked at me like an angry eye. Now I was starting to worry. In 25 years of holding security clearances, my access had never been revoked, suspended, or even questioned. I'd passed every background check, every polygraph exam, every psychological evaluation they'd thrown at me. I pressed the intercom button. Security, this is Chris Sullivan. Badge reader on the East Corridor seems to be malfunctioning. The voice that came back wasn't George Peterson, our usual security guy who'd been working here longer than some of the satellites we monitor. It was younger, nervous, unfamiliar. Hold on, Mr. Sullivan. System shows a sync issue. I'll buzz you through. A sync issue. On a closed-loop system connected directly to Pentagon servers. That's like saying a submarine has screen doors. It doesn't happen unless someone takes a sledgehammer to the infrastructure or deliberately introduces problems into the network. The door clicked open and I walked through, but my gut was sending me warning signals. 25 years in defense work teaches you to trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it usually is wrong. When systems start acting unusual, it's rarely an accident. I grabbed a sandwich from the cafeteria, turkey and Swiss on bread that tasted like cardboard, and sat in the corner booth where I could see the entire room. My mind was racing through possibilities. Badge failures could mean anything from administrative errors to security investigations, but the timing felt suspicious. Anthony had been asking a lot of questions about our systems lately, questions about access protocols, backup procedures, and personnel costs. Yesterday I'd seen him in the IT department whispering with our systems administrator, a guy named Terry who'd graduated from community college with a 2-year degree and thought he understood enterprise security because he'd watched some YouTube videos about hacking. Terry was exactly the kind of person who might help Anthony do something stupid if Anthony convinced him it was legitimate. I finished my disappointing sandwich and headed back to the secure area. My badge worked on the main entrance turnstile, but there was a delay. Maybe half a second longer than normal. To most people, that's nothing. To someone who's worked with these systems for 15 years, that delay means data is being routed somewhere else for additional verification. Someone was monitoring my access in real time, checking each entry against additional databases or approval systems. When I got back to the command center, everything looked exactly as I'd left it. My workstation was locked, The server status lights were all green, and the satellite telemetry was flowing normally across the wall monitors. But something felt different. The air seemed heavier. There was a tension in the room that hadn't been there before. I logged into my workstation and immediately pulled up the access logs using a keyboard shortcut I'd programmed years ago. A little maintenance backdoor that bypasses the standard graphical interface and connects directly to the system kernel. It's not in any documentation, it's not part of any official procedure, it's just a tool I'd created for myself during late-night troubleshooting sessions. The logs told a story that made my blood pressure spike. There it was, clear as daylight. User, Chris Sullivan, time 12:47 p.m. Command, export, home, satellite data, dev/null. Someone had accessed my terminal while I was eating my cardboard sandwich. They'd tried to copy our entire satellite database, but whoever did it was clearly an amateur. They'd attempted to redirect the data to what they thought was a hidden folder, but dev/null is actually a digital trash can, a system location where data goes to disappear forever. They'd accidentally deleted their own attempted theft. It was sloppy work, embarrassingly sloppy. The kind of mistake that first-year computer science students make when they're learning basic Linux commands. But it was also deeply insulting. Someone had walked into my workspace, sat down at my terminal, and tried to steal classified defense data using techniques they'd probably learned from a Hacking for Dummies book. The timestamp told me exactly when it had happened. The command history showed me exactly what they'd tried to do. And the amateur-level execution told me exactly who was behind it. This had Anthony's fingerprints all over it, probably with help from Terry, the YouTube-educated systems administrator. I didn't close the window. I didn't delete the evidence. I didn't even minimize the screen. If they were coming for me, and the badge malfunctions suggested they probably were, I needed to document everything. Evidence has a way of disappearing in corporate environments, especially when executives are trying to cover up their mistakes. Instead, I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out what looked like a standard conference promotional keychain. To anyone watching, I was just grabbing a USB drive. But this particular device was more sophisticated than it appeared. It was a military-grade storage device designed to look like civilian junk, with its own encryption protocols and steganographic capabilities that could hide data in plain sight. I plugged the device into the maintenance port on the back of my workstation, a connection that isn't monitored by our standard data loss prevention software because I'm the one who wrote the DLP system exceptions. The port was originally designed for diagnostic equipment, but it also provided direct kernel access that bypassed most security logging. It was my insurance policy, a way to maintain evidence of what really happened in case someone tried to rewrite history later. I initiated a silent data mirror of the past 48 hours of system logs. Every keystroke, every login attempt, every file access, every failed authentication, everything that had happened on our network since Anthony started asking suspicious questions. The download progress bar crept forward, 15%, 30%, 45%. Each percentage point represented thousands of log entries that would tell the complete story of who had accessed what, when they'd accessed it, and what they'd tried to do with it. While the data copied, I opened a secure communication window to document my findings. The evidence was damning. Not only had someone accessed my terminal without authorization, but they'd also attempted to circumvent 3 different security protocols in the process. The command history showed multiple failed attempts to export classified data, each one more amateur than the last. Whoever did this had clearly learned their hacking techniques from internet tutorials rather than actual security training. The download completed. I pocketed the device and closed all the diagnostic windows. From the outside, it would look like I'd just been doing routine system maintenance. But now I had a complete record of everything that had happened, encrypted and secured on a device that looked like a $2 conference giveaway. I spent the rest of the afternoon working normally, monitoring satellite feeds and updating system parameters. But I could feel the tension building. The atmosphere in the building had changed. People were walking more quietly. Conversations stopped when I entered the break room. Even George Peterson at the security desk seemed nervous when I passed by his station. The summons came at 8:30 the next morning. An Outlook calendar invitation marked urgent in red letters. No agenda, no details, just a meeting request with Anthony Walsh and Patricia Williams from Human Resources. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. in Conference Room B, the same room where they'd announced the last round of layoffs 6 months ago. I knew exactly what this was about. 25 years in corporate defense contracting teaches you to recognize the warning signs. Emergency HR meetings don't happen to give you good news. They happen to cover the company's legal exposure when they're about to do something that might trigger lawsuits. I walked into Conference Room B at exactly 9 a.m. Anthony was already there, wearing one of those expensive quarter-zip fleeces that cost more than most people's monthly salary. He had a manila folder positioned precisely in front of him on the fake mahogany table, and his barely contained smirk told me he thought he was about to have the best day of his corporate career. Patricia Williams from HR looked like she'd rather be getting root canal surgery. She was aggressively shuffling papers that didn't need shuffling, avoiding eye contact with everyone in the room and periodically checking her phone like she was expecting rescue messages. Patricia had been with the company for 12 years. She knew what legitimate HR procedures looked like, and this clearly wasn't one of them. "Chris, please have a seat," Anthony said, trying to sound grave and authoritative, but unable to hide the excitement in his voice. "We need to discuss your security clearance status." He slid a single sheet of paper across the table with theatrical precision. Standard company letterhead, but no Department of Defense watermarks, no Pentagon verification codes, no official signatures or seal stamps, just Arial font, size 12, double-spaced lies formatted to look official. "We received notification from the federal government that your top-secret clearance has been flagged as expired pending administrative review," Anthony announced, his voice dropping an octave to sound more important. "Effective immediately, we have to terminate your access to all classified systems and facilities." I picked up the paper and read it carefully. Subject: Clearance status notification. Reason: administrative review required. Effective date: immediate. The document was trying to mimic official Pentagon correspondence, but it was missing about 15 different security features that real government documents always include. No reference numbers, no agency contact information, no classified handling instructions. I almost laughed out loud. I really did have to bite my tongue to keep from chuckling. Clearances like mine don't expire because of administrative reviews. They're monitored continuously by the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency using systems that check everything from your credit score to your parking tickets. If my clearance was actually revoked, I wouldn't be sitting in a conference room with Anthony and nervous Patricia. I'd be in a windowless building in Washington, D.C., explaining myself to federal investigators who don't believe in small talk. "Expired," I repeated slowly, keeping my voice completely level. "That's very interesting, Anthony. My periodic reinvestigation isn't due until 2028, and typically, the Department of Defense notifies the subject directly through secure mail channels before notifying the contractor." "Did they send you the official documentation?" Anthony waved his hand dismissively, like he was shooing away an annoying insect. "The federal bureaucracy is complicated, Chris. You know how these agencies work. The important thing is that without an active clearance, you can't be in the secure facility. You can't access the satellite systems. Frankly, you're now a security liability." Patricia finally found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "We've prepared a comprehensive severance package. 2 weeks of salary plus 6 months of health insurance continuation. If you're willing to sign the voluntary separation agreement today, we can have everything processed by this afternoon." "I'm not signing anything," I said calmly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Anthony's smirk faltered for the first time. "Excuse me?" he said. "I'm not signing a voluntary separation agreement based on fraudulent documentation," I clarified, my voice still perfectly steady. "If you're terminating my employment based on false claims about my security clearance, then document it properly. Put it in writing. Make it official." "Fire me!" Anthony's corporate mask slipped completely. His smile turned predatory, all teeth and cold calculation. "Fine. If that's how you want to play this game. Turn over your badge, your access tokens, and your system authentication codes." I reached into my bag and methodically placed my items on the conference table. First, my security badge, the plastic rectangle that had been my identity for 15 years. The photo was from 2008, back when I still had hair and believed that hard work was always rewarded fairly. Next to it, I placed my RSA token, the small electronic device that generated 6-digit security codes every 30 seconds. "What about the master access codes?" Anthony asked eagerly. "The administrative passwords for the satellite coordination network?" There it was, the real reason for this entire charade. He wanted my system access codes so he could hand them over to whoever he'd hired to replace me. Probably someone younger, cheaper, and completely unqualified to handle defense systems that cost more than small countries' annual budgets. "The access codes aren't physical objects, Anthony," I explained slowly, like I was teaching quantum physics to a golden retriever. "They're algorithmically generated based on biometric authentication tied to my security profile. The codes rotate every 8 hours using cryptographic seeds that are linked to my fingerprints, retinal patterns, and voice authentication. You can't just hand them to someone else like car keys. We'll figure that out, he snapped, his patience finally exhausted. Security will escort you from the building. Clean out your desk. You have 10 minutes. I stood up slowly and looked Anthony directly in the eye. You really have no idea what you're dealing with, do you? This isn't customer relationship management software. This is a defense coordination network that manages satellite data for military operations across 3 time zones. Your time has passed, Chris, he said with obvious satisfaction. We need fresh thinking, modern approaches, agile methodologies, fresh thinking, modern approaches. He wanted to replace 25 years of defense experience with someone who'd learned programming from online tutorials. I didn't slam the door on my way out. I didn't raise my voice or make threats. I just walked calmly to my desk, packed my personal items, and left the building like a professional. But Anthony had just made the biggest mistake of his corporate career. He'd lied about a federal security clearance, committed fraud involving classified systems, and compromised national security to save money on payroll. And I was about to make sure the very right people found out about all of it. I didn't drive home after being escorted out. Home is where you go to lick your wounds and feel sorry for yourself. Instead, I drove straight to Peterson Air Force Base, to a nondescript office building about 2 miles from the main gate. The sign out front just says Defense Contractor Liaison Office, but people in our business know it's where you report security breaches that can't go through normal corporate channels. The building looks like any other government office. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and that particular smell of industrial carpet and bureaucracy. But the people inside have authority that reaches all the way to the Pentagon. I checked in with a receptionist who looked like she could break someone's arm without spilling her coffee, and within 15 minutes I was sitting across from Director Paul Turner, a retired Air Force colonel who'd been handling contractor oversight for 8 years. Mr. Sullivan, Turner said, reviewing the evidence on my USB device, this is concerning. Forged federal documents, unauthorized access to classified systems, and attempted data theft. How long has Mr. Walsh been exhibiting this behavior? The questionable decision started about 3 months ago, I replied. But the actual security violations began yesterday when someone accessed my terminal without authorization. Turner nodded and made notes in a file that probably contained more information about me than my mother knew. We'll need to verify your claims before taking action. Can you monitor their activities remotely? I explained about the maintenance backdoor I'd built into the system years ago. Strictly speaking, it probably violated a few IT policies, but it was designed for emergency situations exactly like this one. Turner didn't seem concerned about the technicalities. He was more interested in what Anthony might do next. Keep watching, Turner said. Document everything. We'll be in touch. That night, I sat in my home workshop monitoring the disaster unfold in real time. Anthony had moved fast. By 2:00 p.m., he'd hired Brandon Cole, a 27-year-old programmer from California who'd been fired from 2 startups for incompetence, but apparently interviewed well. By 4:00 p.m., Brandon was sitting at my workstation trying to figure out how to access systems that required security clearances he didn't possess. I watched through the security cameras as Brandon typed commands he'd clearly copied from internet forums. He was trying to install consumer-grade software on military networks, attempting to download code from public repositories onto classified systems, and generally treating a multi-billion-dollar defense network like his personal laptop. Anthony, Brandon called out around 6:00 p.m., the security on this system is insane. I can't install any of my development tools. How did the old guy get anything done? Anthony walked over. Carrying 2 cups of coffee like this was just another startup office. Chris was old school. Just work around the security restrictions. We need this operational by Monday. Sure, no problem, Brandon said confidently. I'm just going to clear out some of these legacy files to make room. I watched in horror as Brandon typed rm/rf/var log checksums. Those weren't legacy files. Those were integrity verification checksums that confirmed every piece of satellite data we received was authentic and uncompromised. Deleting them would trigger emergency protocols designed to protect against hostile attacks on our infrastructure. Brandon hit enter. For about 30 seconds, nothing visible happened. Then, silently, alerts started cascading through government networks. The system assumed the checksums had been destroyed by foreign hackers and immediately began lockdown procedures. Data encryption activated, satellite feeds switched to emergency mode, and most importantly, automated alerts went out to every relevant defense agency on the East Coast. My secure phone buzzed 3 minutes later. Handler. Critical security event detected. Node 4 integrity failure. Status report required. Sullivan. Unauthorized personnel deleted verification checksums. I was terminated yesterday under false pretenses. Handler. Terminated? Your clearance shows active. Who authorized termination? Sullivan. Site manager Anthony Walsh using forged federal documents. Handler. Stand by. Investigation team mobilizing. 20 minutes later, Brandon made it worse. Much worse. Unable to figure out why the system wasn't responding, he decided to reboot the main server rack during active lockdown procedures. That's like performing CPR on someone by hitting them with a sledgehammer. Every satellite feed went dark simultaneously. The phone calls started immediately. NOAA wanted to know why weather data had stopped flowing. The Air Force wanted to know why 3 military exercises had lost satellite coverage. The Pentagon wanted to know why their Western tracking network had gone completely offline. Anthony spent that night frantically trying to call me. I let every call go to voicemail and listened to his increasingly desperate messages. Chris, please pick up. There's been a malfunction. We need your help. I can double your salary. Triple it. Just please, call me back. The federal response team arrived at 8 a.m. the next morning. Not one car, a convoy. 2 black SUVs, a mobile command unit, and enough federal agents to investigate a terrorist attack. I wasn't there to see it in person, but I was watching through the security cameras as Agent Jennifer Brooks walked into the building like she owned it. Agent Brooks was Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, the kind of federal investigator who can end careers with a phone call. She had authorization to seize systems, arrest suspects, and suspend security clearances pending investigation. When she walked into Anthony's office with a clipboard and a very serious expression, I knew his day was about to get much worse. Mr. Walsh, we need to discuss the forged federal security documents you used to terminate Christopher Sullivan, she said without preamble. Anthony's face went white. Forged? No, that was just internal paperwork, HR documentation. Sir, falsifying federal clearance credentials is a felony under the Espionage Act. You're looking at 10 to 15 years in federal prison. While Anthony was discovering that lying to the federal government has serious consequences, Brandon was learning that rebooting defense systems during emergency lockdowns can trigger congressional investigations. The satellite network serving the entire western United States was offline. Military exercises were canceled. Weather tracking was compromised. Agent Brooks called me personally. Mr. Sullivan, we need you on site immediately. Can you restore the network? Yes, ma'am, but I'll need physical access to the facility. We're sending a car. The car was a military police cruiser with 2 MPs in full uniform. Not subtle, but effective. When I walked into that building flanked by federal agents, everyone knew exactly why I was there. The restoration took 40 minutes. I plugged in my backup device, entered my emergency authentication codes, and systematically brought each satellite back online. Green lights across the board. Full network restoration, 0 data loss. Impressive work, Agent Brooks said as the last systems came back online. The Pentagon has a job offer for you. Direct federal employment. No contractors, no corporate politics, no middle managers. Anthony was led away in handcuffs that afternoon. Brandon was blacklisted from any government work for life. The company lost every federal contract and filed for bankruptcy 6 weeks later. 3 months later, I'm sitting in my new office at Peterson Air Force Base with a 40% pay raise and the title Senior Defense Systems Architect. No more corporate streamlining, no more MBA efficiency experts, just the work I've always loved, with people who understand what that work actually means. Sometimes the system works exactly like it's supposed to. You just have to know which buttons to push.